How's it going, my dudes? This video's brought to you by Squarespace today. Star Trek Deep Space Nine does have a bit of a reputation for being, at that point anyway, the darkest of the Star Trek series. And I'm not gonna lie to you, there's a bit of truth to that. There are some things that happen on that show which might possibly break normal folks. You only need to look at what O'Brien went through. There's also, like, the cruelty of some of the things that happened. You know, you had people who were inches away from survival who didn't make it, and others who made impassioned confessions only to be brutally murdered for their honesty. I'm not gonna lie to you folks, this is not the feel-good list that you might be looking for today, and because we're going to be discussing deaths, obviously full spoiler alert is in effect here. You may want to go and play with a puppy or something after this one. Although knowing the nature of this list, that puppy's probably going to try and eat you. With that, I'm Sean Ferrick for TrekCulture, and here are the 10 most messed up deaths in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Number 10, Vargas, the Siege of AR-558. Vargas was one of those unlucky few who were stationed on AR-558 midway through the Dominion War. Now, this was a location in the Chintaka system wherein the Dominion had a supremely important communications relay. They fended off repeated attacks from Jem'Hadar columns and also had to put up with the Houdinis, little bombs that hid in subspace and could go off at any time. The arrival of Captain Sisko and several others of the crew of the Defiant did very little to raise Vargas's spirits, to be honest. He had to put up with so much, and that trauma was as evident as the bandage on his arm. Then, in the final days of what could have been his posting, a brutal attack from yet another Jem'Hadar force saw the man stabbed in the back. This was one of the cruelest deaths that happened in Deep Space Nine. I mean, he was mere hours away from freedom, only to be killed. It may have been horrible, but it was one of the strongest depictions of the horrors of war that Star Trek had done to that point. Number 9, Kwin, What You Leave Behind. How best to remember Kwin? I mean, Louise Fletcher did an incredible job playing the so, like, you love to hate them type role here. She was engaging and she was so utterly convicted of being right all the time, saying that you absolutely had sympathy for Sisko running a mile whenever she arrived on the station. Her descent into evil in the latter days of the Dominion War was not exactly shocking. I mean, she had spent so long in her just single-minded pursuit of power. The only thing that mattered to her was rising to the top, and the manner by which she did that was not that important. Her death, as quick as it was, happened as she tried once again to try and save face. Bitter at the realization that her beloved Power-8s would choose Dukat to be their emissary and not her, she warned Sisko that the key to defeating them was to destroy the text of the Cosmogen. Dukat, with a casually cruel "Are you still here?" flicked his hand and had the fires of the fire caves consume the woman. A thoroughly unpleasant end for a, frankly, unpleasant person. Number 8, Kopaka Battle Lines. This entry, I suppose, is messed up, but also is quite fitting for where the character saw herself going. Kopaka kept the Bajoran people together for much of the occupation, using their faith to unify them against adversity. Now, while she managed to save many lives, she was not without her failings. She gave the location of a group of Bajoran fighters to the Cardassians, which did lead to her son being saved, but it led to the deaths of many others. So her fate in battle lines could be seen as her penance. Traveling through to the Gamma Quadrant, she's killed in the crash that destroys the Yangtze Kiang. Then she sits back up again. Happy days. Well, not really. There's a catch. This revivification only happens and stays, in effect, on the planet's surface. Now, she's not alone. There are two warring factions who continually come together, kill each other, wake up again, and repeat the process the next day. Kopaka elects to remain alive and remain behind on this planet and dedicate the rest of her life, however long it may be, to helping these two warring factions find peace. It definitely qualifies as a messed up death because, frankly, her afterlife will become a constant life of servitude. Although we suspect that if we were in Kopaka's place, we may not see it as messed up, but simply deserving. Number 7. Jadzia Dax, Tears the Prophets. You knew it was coming. Killed by a disgruntled producer or a possessed supervillain, we'll leave that one up to you. Jadzia Dax was in the Bajoran Temple aboard Deep Space Nine when Dukat beamed in. His mission was to attack the Prophets. His collateral damage was Jadzia Dax. This may be a very cynical way of looking at it, but the signs were all there. She'd just been told by Dr. Bashir that, yep, that medicine he was giving her to allow herself and Worf to have a baby was working, things were going well, they just bought a boat called the Live Forever. Her number was up. Mid-prayer of thanks to the Prophets, Dukat beams in, raises his arm, and sends a blast of energy at her that kills her. She does survive long enough for Bashir to save the Dax symbiont, but there's nothing he can do for Jadzia, and she dies on her sickbed with Worf and Sisko beside her. There's a small consolation knowing that the Dax symbiont survived to be transferred into Ezri Dax, but quite frankly, that is very little comfort for this stupid, unfair death. Number 6. Chula Victims, Field of Fire. Lieutenant Hector Ilario, Science Officer Greta Van de Weg, and Petty Officer Zim Brott all ended up on the wrong end of Chulak's modified TR-116 rifle. This one had a micro-transporter attached to the firing chamber, which meant Chulak could stand anywhere on the station and shoot anyone he wanted, and it wouldn't be traced back to him. These were the victims of a man who was so enraged by the joy of others, owing to the amount of personal loss that he had felt. These people had nothing in common, save for the fact that they had photos in their quarters of happy, smiling times, something Chulak felt was directly mocking him. For this completely unfair mocking feeling, all of these people lost their lives. It took Ezri Dax channeling the memories and spirit of her former host Joran Dax, something he knew a thing or two about serial killers, to track down Chulak. In a nail-biting finale, Ezri just manages to miss a bullet from Chulak while shooting him in the shoulder. Number 5. Crewman Muens, the ship. Crewman Muens became an early casualty in the slow build-up to the Dominion War. Deep Space Nine rarely shied away from showing the horrors of war, but they really went the extra mile in the Season 5 episode, The Ship, depicting a slow, painful death for this unlucky man who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Muens was part of the away mission that was assigned with salvaging the downed Jem'Hadar ship, and thus came under fire by Jem'Hadar, being hit by one of their weapons, condemning the man to a slow death, something that Worf found particularly grating. He butted heads with O'Brien, saying that they should kill the man and put him out of his misery, whereas O'Brien vehemently objected, thinking that there was always hope, and would that the episode have taken O'Brien's view rather than later in part confirming Worf's view. Muens slowly bleeds to death, and in fact passes away mere hours before the rescue party arrives. Number 4. Mila, What You Leave Behind. Mila was guilty of nothing more than association, but this did not spare her from an ignoble end in the series finale What You Leave Behind. She'd been housekeeper to Anabra and Tain for many years, and most likely was Garrick's mother, though this was never confirmed on screen. When Garrick, Damar, and Colonel Kira found themselves stranded on Cardassia Prime, she took them in, allowing them to stay in her cellar. Now, she did make them clean it, to be fair. Her support of them, and by extension the resistance movement, came to a shattering end when she was discovered by the Jem'Hadar and the Cardassians, thrown down the stairs of her cellar, and then, if she hadn't been killed before, murdered when a bomb went off right beside her head. Garrick was devastated by this death, and this was part of the reason he took such pleasure in killing Weyoun in cold blood when they eventually made it to Dominion HQ. Number 3. Tora Ziyal, Sacrifice of Angels. Meeting her father was the beginning of the end for Tora Zial back in the Season 4 episode Indiscretion. I mean, again, the warning was there. He held her at gunpoint the moment he saw her. It's very odd to say this, but possible she was better off with the Breen? Now, for a time, things did look to be on the up for her. Dukat, instead of killing her, took her in, went to bat for her, and lost all of his standing in society because of it. You see, in Cardassian society, orphans have no position, so Dukat standing up for her lost him, his family, and his commission. They then traveled together aboard the freighter Grumal, which would then lead to her becoming part of his one-man war against the Klingon Empire. Kira was able to finally convince Dukat that this was no place for Zial, and she took up residence on Deep Space Nine, which is where she stayed until the closing moments of the Dominion occupation of DS9, when she confessed to her father that she'd been a part of the plan to free Rom and Jake, Kira and Lita from prison. Dukat looks as if, for a moment, he might be able to overlook this, but he never gets the chance, because from behind him, Damar pulls out his disruptor and fires straight at Zial's chest. She survives mere moments later, dying in her father's arms. Number 2, Aon Marissa Duet. Aon Marissa is a name that will probably never turn up in the annals of greatest Cardassians of all time. We believe he really has a place there because of the personal sacrifice he endured to bring the Cardassian people to see what they had done over the occupation. His efforts, however noble, were perhaps misguided. His last days were spent attempting to take on the appearance and identity of Gul Darheel, the so-called Butcher of Galatep. He would allow himself to be caught, tried, and then executed as a war criminal, forcing the Cardassians to admit their guilt. He was discovered as Marissa, which crushed him, but as Kira said, his death would prove nothing other than another innocent life being condemned to die. He felt bitter that his attempt was thwarted as he walked through the promenade with Kira. Perhaps they might be able to come up with another way of helping the Cardassians grow, if it wasn't for that one Bajoran man who took that opportunity to pull out a knife and stab Marissa in the back, killing him for no other reason than he was Cardassian, which for that man was enough. But as Kira said, no, it wasn't. Number 1, Vedic Bareil, life support. Bareil died slowly, piece by piece, being carved away as he was forcibly kept alive long enough to finish peace talks. Now, he may have volunteered for this, but he died slowly and painfully. Watching him was slow and painful, as Kira certainly felt, but it was also slow and painful for Bashir, who was the one forced to do the carving. The episode Life Support sees the death of this once great contender for Kai. It sees some humanity, so to speak, from Kwin as she attempts to conduct these peace talks, but very much relies on Bareil, credits him until after he dies, wherein she takes all of the credit for herself. By the time the end actually comes, it's hard to say how much of Bareil slipped away at that point, because how much of Bareil was actually left. It was a slow, sad ending, one that Kira would never truly recover from. Hi, I'm Tom Larkin. Last time I told you about my GTN blog. Don't tell Starfleet. Thanks, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform designed to help entrepreneurs stand out online. Squarespace allows me to link my social and multimedia accounts in just a few clicks, so you can see everything that GTN has to report, including things Starfleet doesn't want you to know. Squarespace uses Daystrom-approved design intelligence AI technology. Take control and build a beautiful, personalized website catered to your needs. SEO doodads, so you show up to more civilizations more often, but beware, Section 31 is a thing. Go to squarespace.com/TrekCulture, where you will get a free trial and 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. And remember, don't tell Starfleet. that was all very heavy, wasn't it? Okay, right, now go out and do something fun. I don't know, have a coffee, have a tea. Have a tea. A tea will help. Make sure that you're following us on the various socials. I've been at Sean Ferrick. Make sure that you're following at TrekCulture as well. Please and thank you. Honestly, yous are awesome. Live long and prosper till I see you again. Let's hope you never turn up on one of these lists, folks. You are wonderful. You are brilliant. I will talk to you soon. Thanks very much.